Good morning, and welcome back to the LAMDA log. Um, this is week 7, day 1, Monday, the 2nd of March, 2026. I'm just going to jump right into it. We had a warm up in EO9, John Lyons' studio, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken. But then, oh, there's a town hall today. Sorry. No, the George Whitaker studio. Georgia Whitaker. I don't know. But yeah, it's a studio. And then we had Voice to Text in West Collett studio with George. So we began, because we haven't been together for a few weeks, with a review. What did we learn from watching the others? We were with him last week. But stay with one person for tricolons, those threes, those repeated threes. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar, meaning bring the audience in, find the person and then speak, place the offender or the accused behind you, because that's much better place than accusing any audience members directly. Don't devoice at the end. You can be intimate without losing energy. The call to action should have a full stop. Let it sink in and let them take it in. Say thank you at the end of the speech. Stay with someone even if they're not looking at you. And we never shame people for not listening. They might be taking notes or doing something else, right? There's nothing wrong with challenging the audience, but shaming them doesn't help win arguments. Something that I need to do for homework is check and make a content warning based on the guidelines on Canvas. I don't think I'll need one. Mine's pretty tame, but I'll have that option. And then our first speaker went up, and she did the Leonardo DiCaprio UN climate crisis speech. And there's a great line in that I wrote down, that you can either make history or be vilified by it. Or be vilified by it. And then if you have gendered language, just replace it so that it's more just inclusive and plain for whomever is listening. This student stood on the landing for a practice. In West College Studio, you have a little area here, and then there's some stairs up to, I think, a little storage section. And so she went up there, and she could ground herself with the newel, I think is what we called it. We didn't know. It's that little nubby bit on the banister, by the banister and then just nub. And then that was a way to not depower yourself and hunch over or brace, but just to ground yourself a little bit. Look for the natural builds and dynamics in the piece. And it's really better when it's fully memorized. Then the next person got up and they talked about music and education and access. And 3 questions are asked that don't seem to go anywhere. So if while cutting your speeches, you cut out the answers to some of these questions, that becomes a little problematic. So it's better to cut out a whole question and answer than the answers to questions, because they're rhetorical questions, so not meant to be answered. But then if you don't answer them yourself, then they kind of lose their purpose. And then also give the answer to a question with the same person. Then I had a random thought. I was talking to a student who who didn't come to class on Friday because they were just exhausted and didn't want to find burnout. And I don't know how I feel about burnout, because I like to push for it. I feel satisfaction when I get to the end of a semester or whatever thing, and I have that burnout. I feel good about it. And then I usually crash at the break. And so I don't know if that's unhealthy behavior, but it was something that I thought about. And then the student, she did, that was a tangent, but the student did an exercise where they looked at someone. They said, I see their name. So like, we'll say me for example. I see Zion. I give Zion some information. I see how it lands. I see John. I give John some information. I see how it lands. I see Sarah. I give Sarah some information. I see how it lands. And just exactly like that. And then did it again, but with the text, with um, the actual text that she has in the speech. And it just made it clear and specific and appropriately timed. So it was good. And it felt much more important as well. And then the next guy went, and it was a Malcolm X speech about the necessity of violence in revolution, which fascinating because I'm fairly pacifistic, but he brought up a lot of good points. And he had such great connection with each person. Great second circle, if you know anything about that principle. Like, first circle is all really inward and kind of self-conscious. Second circle is the like flow, you're connected and you're confident. And then third circle is like overly boisterous and not taking in consideration other people. But this speech was it's a civil rights speech by Malcolm X, and the villain of the speech is the white man, you know, mostly like the empowered ruling class white men, but still. And so it was fascinating to be within the circle of the speech and to feel like I was included in helping and invited to participate in the revolution more than that the revolution was against me. I hope that makes sense. And it was really cool to feel that inclusion and to feel that invitation and not just be vilified, which I don't feel that way most of the time. I'm not worried about feeling that way, but but I didn't. And that was cool. Yeah. And then he's going to repeat the call to arms at the end as well, which, excuse me, I had a little runny nose bit. But yeah, he's going to repeat the call to arms, which will be great because he had a long speech that he cut down a bit. And then I need to do more research on like Malcolm X and more about the civil rights because I know the basics, but I don't know enough for a lot. And then another student went, and it was an Irish perspective of stopping the genocide in Israel. And oh, that's wrong. But George's big note was that he wanted to hear the speaker. He wanted to hear the individuality, the who she is, and not just politician voice. I'm a speaker. Know your content warnings and make sure not to vilify or offend innocent people. I think there's tricky ground in holding a government responsible and not condemning the citizens of that government. Just because you're one way or another. And then another student went and had the same topic, but it was the Greta Thunberg's speech about the genocide, the Palestinian genocide, and she did a great job at finding the person and then speaking, and it was also great staying with one person. I don't know if I just noticed it because we've been talking about it, but it felt impactful to just like stay with a person for a little bit instead of bump, 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 whatever. Um, she was told to repeat the call to arms at the end to echo it. But George also felt that he was kind of getting lost in the speech and that it wasn't super well written. Like Greta Thunberg is a passionate and philosophically consistent person. She very much lives what she believes, which is super admirable. But she's not the strongest speaker, and so she hasn't used great rhetoric devices and stuff. And so the student said she found another one in the process, and I think she's going to go and stick with that one. And then yeah, George still worked with her on making it sound more like the student and more conversational, softening and humanize it. So he asked her to give a compliment to somebody or ask you how you are. It's like, Zion, how are you? Into the speech. Or, hey, I really like your glasses. Into the speech, just to bring that human quality. Because he mentioned how there's a lot of speakers that just don't have that warmth. They're inherently abrasive and unlikable. So they might be wonderful people, might not, but you get these characters that just seem unlikable, and it makes you not care what they have to say as much. Um, one of his examples was like Caroline Levitt. She always has this coldness and this condescension in the way that she speaks. Like her information and her rhetorical devices are super strong, and she's able to answer or respond to any question. Um, but you never feel like you know her or that she's someone you'd like to have lunch with. And so you want to bring the humanity and the warmth to it. Then then another student went up, and it was like a 2013 speech about paying for school lunches. And he did a great job at just bringing character to it, right? I saw this student, and it was really nice that way. And he said a statement that is given and then clocked in with some others. So he'd be like, "Isn't this supposed to be a way?" Da 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 da. So like a kind of a given statement, something that's kind of what's the word? Commonsensical. And then he would check in with some others. He's like, "Am I right?" Not saying "Am I right," but that idea is like, "The sky is blue." And then he would go, to make that process work, George says we should come back to the person we were. The sky is blue. And therefore, or whatever the speech would require. Because that helps connect the thought a little more. And it makes it cleaner, and it doesn't seem like you're just kind of like scattering about. Don't lean too much on one hip. Don't be too jolly green giant. The student, he's I think 6'4", and a skinnier guy, and so he just had this kind of like theatrical or kind of pose that he took, and so don't have too much of that, but kind of normalize it, neutralize it. But he also did really great at specific, clean, committed gestures, which was nice. And then if somebody ever laughs or responds in the audience, don't use that as a negative to be like, that's the bad person. That's the person we're talking about. But use it to be like, yeah, she gets me, right? And bring them into it. Because even if they're laughing at you, that's a more powerful stance to take. It's like, yeah, she gets it. She's with me. And then his speech was to Madam Speaker. That's who it was to. And so he talked about like casting Madam Speaker, like a person in the audience to be his Madam Speaker to return an address to. And the way to do that was, as you're looking, kind of find that person. And you don't have to like scan everyone and then come back to one you like, but as you're looking, just as you land on them, find them. Breathe in a preparation and say, Madam Speaker. Yeah. I asked about my speech because there's a statement in my speech that that just I understand its rhetorical purposes. The speech, it's just, here's the thing. It's I'm in an international crowd, and it's pretty nationalistic and braggadocious in for the United States. And the line is, this country has fed more people, clothed more people, cured more people, and liberated more people than all the other countries in the world combined, which statistically is probably true. But I don't know, it feels like it's not for this crowd because my speaker, I believe he's a Democratic, or was a Democratic congressman from Ohio, and so he was appealing towards the conservatives and the more nationalist members of Congress to work together and to act together, and so he invokes that more nationalist pride, but I don't know how it's going to land on other people because it's not, my speech doesn't apologize or doesn't acknowledge any of the faults of the United States. It does have some people. It says that like there have been crooks, scoundrels, liars in like the House of Congress and stuff. But so I asked him like, what if you don't like fully love or agree with everything in the speech, but you like other things? And he said, well, just come and memorized, and we'll do you first on next week. So I'm gonna do that. And then we had lunch. What is this? I also wrote melt down the wall to show. Oh, melt down this kind of wall to show yourself. That's also getting into warmth. And then we had mask with Heriberto, and it was great. I love Heriberto. So I found out that Eri is the head of the bees, so the second year bachelor students. But he promises to see us in the Spanish Golden Age. He tried to see us in the Jacobean, but there was time changes and things, and it didn't work out. Yeah, we just sat in a circle and we talked about what we've seen and experienced from the shows here and with Micaela. And it was nice just like to catch up and reconnect because we haven't had Heriberto since first term. And then we just warming up physically, and we walked, and we had purpose, and we changed pace, and we walked backwards, which is always fun. We haven't done that in a minute. I feel like we used to walk the room in every class all the time, and it's just like walk the space. And now we don't do it nearly as much. But then we naturally like paired up with people so that we could then walk together. And then we switched and picked another partner, and then walked, and then switched. And then we amplified the following, trying to make it tricky and difficult. I was army crawling at one point, jumping around, spinning, just doing different things. And then we did a little physical warm-up and rubbed and massaged each other's shoulders, and then like also held the shoulders on like pressure point. Not pressure point, but gave pressure to it and then let go and released. And yeah, it was a good little warm-up. And then we saw Eddie's masks, because he has his own masks. And he said, try to imagine the character. Then we had our kind of activity, which was very much like the what you calls them, the forest exercises we did in his class before, but with masks, where he gave us a prompt and a character mask, and then we accepted kind of the prompt. And he said, try to imagine that a character has been working hard for months, and the time arises for a well-deserved vacation in a little Greek island, and you found the perfect Airbnb. You're happy, amazing, perfect holiday. Um, I think I said sand jumping. Oh, yeah. And then when you're out on the beach, maybe you put down your towel, you get some food or whatever it is. You put up your umbrella, and then you notice like the sand is jumping, and then you look out and you see this tsunami, this wave just coming up, and so you have to run to tell the locals, because the locals are not at the beach; they're at the market, and you have to tell them, but you don't speak their language. So also, yeah. So there's a tsunami. You gotta, yeah. Also, he says that there's a lot of mysticism or ritualistic stuff that he finds in mask work. Like a lot of people, they look at the mask and then they bow to it, and then they feel like there's an energy or a spirit in the mask. And when you put on the mask, it it you release that spirit. Eddie doesn't believe that. He believes that that is inside of you, that the mask just allows you to show an inner part of yourself, and it all comes from you. And also, he said, if you don't bow to yourself, why would you bow to something else, like another thing? That was interesting. I felt like this big like mic drop moment. It's like, oh, that's deep. um but then I would say there are things greater than me. Anyway, I digress. So the process is, you pick a mask, you look at it, let it start to like change you physically, see how that is. Put it on, choose a physicality and a voice, and then begin the exercise. So the first student went and picked, I drew the little masks. So it was like an old man mask. I had this long hair that was like pulled back in a ponytail. And it was funny. Some of the things his character was French. And so he spoke French, and this actor actually speaks French. So there was a little bit of that. And he needed to simplify the action, because with mask, it's all very, let's do one thing at a time and apply what we've learned. Then there's a rhythm to it, build up and then shift to noticing that tsunami, but don't have that shift be a drop in energy. Have that shift be like into another door and up higher. You always want this constant build. And great mask work and great clown work is just so high energy. So this is compressed, it's amplified. And then would he sing? Would your character sing? Yes. Always play with it. Find that switch at the height, not at a lull. And in danger and extreme situations, these amplifications exist. There's this inclination to be like, well, Eddie, that's not real. That's not how people respond. Who's to say? Like if the whole building started shaking, you'd be like, whoa. You wouldn't just be like, whoa. Subtly moving just a little bit. Something's going, no, you'd be like, whoa, what was that? And then the next student went, and they had this mask that was like a quarter mask. It's a little hard to see. I try to color in the eyes to show that there wasn't anything, like I did with the one up there, but it just had this forehead, and then this nose, this large bulbous nose. And this person wasn't vocalizing a lot at first, and so he kind of pushed her to do that. And then, what's the character's name? And it was Bob. And then physical actions are your friend. And then once again, like, Eddie, that's not real, but says who? And then what stuff can you find? What emotional things can you experience? You can experience so many emotions. You could be frustrated. Like, she was able to get to the townspeople, and maybe they're not listening to you, or they're being frustrating, or stupid, or they can't understand you. And so does it make you sad and you're all gonna die? Like how do you continue with that? Um, and then do you get frustrated, sad, embarrassed? Bob can talk English words. And so you really want to physicalize the story. And so we played a lot with gibberish, so now we don't have to. And then what's the highest level, the biggest, hardest movement, the biggest and hardest movement to do is stillness. But you really have to earn that. And we need poetry to express our experiences, right? Because facts are cold and don't capture it. Words are okay, but it's fine. Poetry is close, but still, it doesn't truly capture an emotion or a feeling. And so, mask work in this elevated approach gets closer. And then we had a new scene. So, it's a new job at Buckingham Palace, working security. And you want to make sure the king is safe, but you don't have the front, the back, or the side entrance to guard. You are given a dog's garden gate. You have no weapon, just a stick. So you get bored and your imagination takes over and you daydream and you physicalize it with an extraordinary state. Okay. So this was the mask the first person got. It's kind of like had these eyelashes and this upper lip and these round cheeks and this little bulbous nose, and it kind of had this Who feeling about it. It was a little whoop, like Jim Carrey's Grinch Who's. So push the character more and follow the absurdity of it. His character's name was Bethany, and it came in. His catchphrase became "Today is the day," and it was like just super excited to guard the gate, and then more voice and physicality, and he kept wanting to follow the prompt, like, oh, I need to guard this gate and people need to come in, so this is really important, so it draws him back, and he lost a little bit of the game, or didn't keep building, because then he'd be like, oh, there's someone at the gate, or there's a dog at the gate, or whatever it is. And then you've got more than one voice, more than one self, right? What we present, what let's embrace. Sorry, I wrote all over this one. What we present is just our mask, right? Um, like in real life, this is my mask, you know. It's kind of like Christian Bale's Batman, you know. No, Rachel, this is my mask. We're all a little crazy, right? Embrace it. Let's embrace that craziness. And then how do you come in? How do you enter? How do you embrace this physicality, this absurdity? And then don't go into self-explanation. Externalize it. Don't just say you're excited, show you're excited. Follow the bit and the daydream. It's not the logic of it, it's the poetry. How do we physicalize emotions and concepts and push it to the extreme? So wonderful concepts. And then the last person went and they had this mask that had these broad eyebrows and this mustache and this large long nose. And so she went for it. So it was super fun. And she had this God save the king, ha ha, and just like had this kind of like, God save the king, ha ha, and then like going to guard the gate. And then there was the dog. He's like, oh, God save the dog, ha ha, yeah, God saves the dog. And then there was a cat, and then it's like, oh, God saves the cat, ha ha, ha ha, yeah. And then the cat died or had a heart attack or something, and she had to like try to give it CPR, and then there's something moving in it. So she cut it open, and there was a mouse that came inside, but she was imagining that it was something else. He's like, it's a mouse. And so she's like, it's a flying mouse. And it's like, God saved the mouse. God saved the mouse. I saved the mouse. And it had this extremity, and it was really dedicated and fun, and played off that bit about like God save the whatever, and haha. And so that was like the beat to the CPR. It's like, God save the mouse, the cat, haha. God saves the cat, haha. And finding that extreme emotions. And comedy is suppressing something that escapes as laughter instead of tears or other outbursts. I thought that was interesting. And then you can do this at such a high level that it becomes effortless. That's always the goal. And this becomes another perspective to draw from when you go into a performance. Like if it's drama or whatever, you can pull from this experience. And then we had our little 30-minute break. And then we had scene study, and we got an email during lunch that Brittany was going to be out sick. I hope she's okay. I hope, yeah. Yeah. But so we were kind of self-led, and so we started out with playing. I didn't actually write anything down, but we played Zap, Zip, Zoo, and I got to the final round, but the thing to turn around was cheese, and I was against a Frenchman, and I don't know a lot of cheeses. I was close. I could tell it wasn't something else. So I was like, zoo. But I was close, and it was fun. We only had one life, and it was kind of taking long. But then we got into circles and did like our little speed dating thing like we'd done with Brittany before, with our lines for Top Girls. And we kind of ran that just to practice. So I think we're going to do 2 scenes on next Monday. And then we had the rest of the class to like work on our thesis or work on other things. And so we talked and worked a lot on like what we're going to do for our self-tape, which is due Wednesday at noon, but I'm going to do it Tuesday night. And yeah, and then I stayed at the school till closing at 9 because I just had work to do. I set up my script, my working rehearsal script. So I have this. That's my name and my characters. So I have the lines on this side, and then a blank page to take notes on that side, and then so on and so forth. La 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 la. And I got obsessed with like using a ruler and making all my lines straight and stuff. And it took like 2 hours to set that up, I think. But yeah, alas, we did it. We conquered. Anyway, that was my day. It was a lovely day. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll tell you all about Tuesday tomorrow, unless I forget or I don't get time to it or something else and I decide sleep is more important or whatever it may be. And then I'll do it on the next day or the next day or the next day or the weekend. Love you. Bye.